is about asking the question about whether current youth support programs and interventions in South Africa have adequately responded to the needs of youth. And you can indicate whether you agree, strongly agree, or whether you don't agree at all. And the third question that we would like for you to respond to is to let us know what your thoughts are about whether current government legislative and policy context is responsive and supportive of the needs of young people. We'll show the results live on the screen, and as you complete those 3 questions, please don't forget to press the submit button. Thank you very much. So let's see. Okay. Lerato, I hope that the responses are coming in fast and furious. We've got 23 responses thus far. And at this stage, most of the people that have responded come from large organizations. There's also quite a significant government contingent. So now, Lerato, do you think I'm going a bit colorblind here, hey? Because I think I've got the orange and the red mixed up here. We actually have, thank you. We actually have more representatives from our NGO and nonprofit community in the room, those people at the coalface who are making a difference, real time. But we also have some people who are implementing programs. We have those from the private sector. We have funders in the room. And then with respect to the question that we've asked around whether, let's see, okay, this thing is hopping about now. We've got 50 responses. On the question about whether government programs have adequately responded to the needs of youth. Okay, can we perhaps pause it now, Lerato, and get into it's jumping a little bit, so I can't quite read. But I think that on the second question, most people disagree. They are saying that government really has not, or that current youth programs specifically in South Africa have not adequately responded to the needs of young people. And on the question of whether government legislative and policy context is responsive and supportive to the needs of young people, well, the vast majority of you disagree. So let us then take that as a context for today's discussions. Lerato, are you closing the poll for now? Right, so you've seen who's in the room. We have quite a large participation from the NGO sector, and there is a significant disagreement that current youth programs support young people, and that government's policy framework is responsive to the needs of young people. So then moving forward, I'm just going to give you a short little bit of an introduction and background to the Jobs Fund. and then we will take it from there. Okay. Right, so the Jobs Fund was established a while back, and it was established in the context of very high levels of unemployment, and government was facing several challenges at the time. It was capitalized with 9 billion rand, and really the program was seen as government's R&D program. We primarily work with intermediaries, and we leverage their networks and their access to provide support to targeted beneficiaries through 4 specific funding windows. These funding windows are called the support for work seekers, enterprise development, infrastructure investment, and institutional capacity building. A key pillar, though, of the Jobs Fund and a key part of our work is to share the knowledge, and to do some, and we also have a rigorous evaluation framework. I think that this morning session is an important session for us, because this brings to life our commitment to share what we learn and to share what our partners learn, which is more important. Next slide, please. So this morning, as I said, we're going to be talking about the design of a basic package of support for youth and the preliminary findings. I think the audience in this room is well aware of the significant challenges that young people face. This research has been developed in this context, and aims to facilitate comprehensive support to young people to assist them in accessing relevant interventions that will support their trajectories to sustainable livelihoods. The design and the piloting of the BPS program is led by the Southern Africa Labour and Development Research Unit, SALDRU, at the University of Cape Town, the Centre for Social Development in Africa at the University of Johannesburg, and other partners in civil society, academia, government, including the Jobs Fund, DG Marie Trust, and others have been also partners since the inception of this particular program. The first phase of designing the basic package of support for people who are in need really focused on a comprehensive and integrated approach to need youth. And this started way back in 2019. It was informed by international good practice and local context. The result was a comprehensive evidence-based proposal for the development and implementation of a basic package of support for youth who are in need. The second phase is focusing on the implementation and providing support to young people. The BPS model that emerged out of phase 1 requires both a transversal policy approach and a youth-centered pragmatic intervention. Phase 2 focuses on developing and nurturing multi-sectoral communities of practice at national, provincial, and local levels to support both young people and the implementation partners, and prepare the necessary systems and tools that are needed to pilot the BPS in 4 selected communities in 2 provinces of South Africa. I think that one of the key takeaways that you will observe during this webinar is that it takes a whole host of partners to make this work a reality. And so without further ado, let's move to the next slide, please. As you can see, those are some of the partners. The initial work was supported by the European Union, the CBPEP program, Capacity Building Program for Employment Promotion, the Western Cape Economic Development Partnership, the Presidential Youth Employment Intervention, Tutua, UNICEF, JPAL, so many partners. And this, as I said, is a key observation. If we are to put young people at the focus and at the center of our interventions, it does require all of us to work together. A siloed approach is what has let our youth down previously, and we cannot afford to proceed in this way. So let me move to the next slide. Right, so it is now my absolute privilege to introduce Ariane and Lauren, an amazing team of women who have been committed to this process, who has been committed through the rigor of their research and then moving towards trying to apply that research and making this pilot become a reality. Ariane is a Chief Research Officer at SALDRO. Her work involves developing and coordinating a youth focus within the existing poverty and inequality initiative of the University of Cape Town. Prior to joining SALDRO, she has worked as a Senior Research Officer at the Children's Institute of UCT. And Ariane holds a PhD in sociology from UCT, and her dissertation looked at educational decision-making in the area of AIDS. Lauren is a development sociologist with a passion for developing and testing evidence-based programs that promote the agency and resilience of excluded groups. Although her work engages with children, youth, and people with disabilities, she is particularly interested in how we unlock the incredible potential of young people in South Africa. She has strong expertise in evaluation research and is skilled in the use of both quantitative and qualitative research approaches. She is particularly interested in the use of research methods that give a voice to vulnerable groups. Ladies, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Najwa, for that wonderful welcome. Ariane and I talk about the basic package of support as our happy project. And I think a large part of that is because of the team of people that work on it and supporters like yourself, Najwa, who have walked this journey with us. So just to give you an overview of where we're going with this presentation, I'll start by providing a very brief overview of the basic package of support. And then we'll move into the bulk of the presentation, which will be looking at some of the lessons that are coming out about who the basic package of support is attracting and the initial outcomes. And then we'll move into the early lessons on what it takes to keep young people engaged, site team support, community engagement, and we'll end with some insights onto what we think is emerging about policy lessons really focused on local level collaboration. Next slide, please. I'm not going to spend too much time here. I think Najwa's already set the scene about the number of young people who are not in employment, education, and training. What I do want to highlight is that the problem that the basic package of support is solving for is that young people experience the trajectory to earning and learning to be alienating and confusing due to that lack of coordination of services and opportunities, what Najwa referred to as us working in silos. And they do this at the same time as they are experiencing multiple deprivations. And those deprivations are related to growing up in and living in households that are affected by income poverty. So we find that these young people are facing income poverty, relatively food and housing insecurity, care responsibilities, mental health and health issues. And there's these range of deprivations, education deprivations as well, that they face while they're trying to navigate this very confusing trajectory to learning and earning. And they therefore are experiencing this as repeated failure when they're trying to access opportunities and they're not making it. They experience it as failure with consequences for their mental health and increased discouragement and disconnection from these trajectories. This is a quote from one of the young people who participated in early focus groups for the basic package of support, but it reflects what a number of young people tell us. She says, just imagine there's a place that I could actually go to for help, for resources, where someone will tell me, and this is a crucial, they'll take my hand and they'll help me. And you'll see that our image for the basic package of support is somebody holding another person's hand. That would make my mom very happy because all of our moms don't necessarily know the answer or know where to go. Next slide, please. So what is our vision? Importantly, the basic package of support is not a job placement program. Rather, it's a program that is aiming to ensure that young people who've been disconnected and excluded for extended periods of time develop a sense of possibility, that their agency and ability to take up pathways towards sustainable livelihoods are supported, and that they feel that they belong and can tackle their own challenges. So this is really a coaching program for young people from a young person's point of view that helps them to develop that sense of possibility and navigational capacity. Next slide, please. So the basic package of support is a two-pronged program. The first part of it is the youth-facing intervention. And here we are proactively reaching out to young people, proactively because these are often young people who've already given up on opportunities, they've tried many things and they've experienced failure, and so they've given up. So we have a team of peer-to-peer mobilizers who proactively reach out to them. We provide customized guidance through a trained youth coach. These youth coaches are child and youth care workers, and we work in partnership with the NACTW to identify them and train them up to become youth coaches. These youth coaches work with the young people to connect them to services that can help them to overcome barriers in their lives and to opportunities that are best suited to their longer term plan. And it's a program that follows up and continues to support young people as they plan their next step. So once they're in a job, they don't disappear from the basic package of support. We still follow up and check how things are going. And if they end that job, they can come back and plan their next step. But as you can see, if we're connecting young people to services and opportunities, if those services and opportunities are not working for young people, we're really not going to make very much difference. And so the second part of the basic package of support is a local service provider partnership that we call a community of practice, operating at the local level in a site, but embedded within a provincial and national partnership network. It ensures that local level service providers are understanding the multiplicity of young people's needs and the importance of all of their involvement. So for instance, clinics may not understand how they're involved in a young person's transition to learning and earning, but when they join a community of practice and they begin to understand this multiplicity, then they realize the work that they need to be doing in partnership. The team, the group of community service partners problem solves to improve service delivery, to promote better coordination and articulation between these services so that we're ensuring that young people at the very local level are not falling through the cracks. Next, please. So in practice, we have proactive outreach, customized guidance through our trained youth coaches, wraparound services, meaning that there's a range of services that we're referring young people to, a continuum of support, so the support doesn't end, the opportunity to loop back into the program at a later stage in the trajectory, and developing that systems support for young people. Next, please. This is just an image that shows what lives inside of the basic package of support, is the proactive outreach, the guidance, counselling, etc., and the referrals. But that is nested within a range of partners, from looking at youth-friendly work opportunities to very basic essential life skills services and life services like your home affairs and getting your ID document, education and training services, health and wellness services, social assistance and social services, and the like. And all of these are crucial as wraparound services for young people. Next, please. I'll pause there in case there's any questions about the nature of the basic package of support before handing over to Ariane.
At the moment, Lauren, there aren't any questions in the chat. And I don't see any hands.
Then I'll hand over to Ariane.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren, and good morning, everyone. So I will share some of the preliminary findings on the implementation of the basic package of support and its first pilot site in Atlantis. That site opened in the second half of January, so we've been going for a while there now, and we thought it was an opportune moment to present some of the lessons that we are learning. The representatives in the room of the NGO world and implementers will appreciate that these are preliminary findings drawn from an actual implementation that takes place in a very real life, real world environment. And therefore, so does our research. And this is something that Lauren and I are grappling with quite a bit, is trying to understand how we get the right kinds of lessons drawn out as we go, very much so supported by our partners that are the implementers in the room, and that remind us every now and then of how that real life plays out. You'll also appreciate, as Lauren presented, the program is very complex because it tries to deal with several challenges in the lives of young people at the same time. And so our lessons also draw or reflect on those various building blocks of the basic package of support. We'll reflect very briefly on who the young people are that are coming through the door of the basic package of support, how the outreach is working, and how young people do or don't stick with the program. The coaching consists of a number of sessions that are implemented and conducted with young people over a period of time. And so it's very possible that we lose young people in between different coaching sessions. So we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail, and I'll also reflect briefly on the community of practice and some of the outcomes there. Next slide, please. So you heard Lauren mention that one of the building blocks of the basic package of support is a proactive outreach approach. This is built on the understanding that young people don't necessarily have a lot of trust in the services that are provided in communities, and that sometimes for those who are the most isolated, it may be necessary to actually proactively go out into the communities and invite them to join a program. That's exactly what BPS does. In Atlantis, we have 2 young people who work as mobilizers. They are our feet on the street. They go into the communities to spread the word on the basic package of support and to invite young people to join. They provide information. And when young people are interested, they record an expression of interest. That has been both in Atlantis and the site that has just opened now in Orange Farm, our first line of outreach. We don't do a big bang launch because we are a pilot, and we won't be able to offer support to all young people in the communities. So we reach out quite carefully in various steps to try and learn who comes through the door with what kind of outreach. Mobilizers first. We then register basic package of support as an opportunity on sayouth.mobi so that young people who are registered on sayouth.mobi and live in the area can respond to the opportunity and express their interest that way. And then, of course, the word spreads and young people walk into the offices looking for information and looking for support. Next slide, please. So who do we have in the BPS program at the moment? And for the stats people in the room, please don't panic when the numbers don't tally. This is because this is a very much a real life reflection of how young people are moving through different sessions and from an expression of interest to an actual participation in a session. We have 164 young people enrolled across the Atlantis and the Orange Farm sites at the moment. 159 of those are in Atlantis, and within Atlantis, 131 of those are actually eligible for the program. Eligible means that they fall within the age bracket of 18 to 25. They are not in education, employment, or training, and they live within the actual area. Those who are not eligible, on the right-hand side there in that dashboard, are not eligible because they don't fit those criteria. Of those who are eligible, this means they have registered an expression of interest on our system. They've left their contact details, and the coaches or the mobilizers reach out to invite them to a first session. Of those, 72 within the Atlantis site seem interested, and so are willing to schedule an appointment for a first session and then actively take up the actual coaching sessions. So you can see that even when a young person expresses an interest and makes the effort to leave their details, their contact details, to be contacted by the coaches, it doesn't necessarily mean we get them back through the door to actually start their first session. and we'll come back to this later, even when they do come through the door for their first session, it doesn't automatically mean we get them back through the door to continue the sessions. This has a range of reasons, and we'll come back to that just now as well. But we can also see there in the bottom left corner of the dashboard that of the 52 young people who are currently still active in the program, 15 got a job through the basic package of support. And this involves either updating their CV or registering them onto a job seeker platform, or quite intensively working with them to prepare them for a job interview. 6 of those got that job opportunity already in or just after the first session, which might be slightly counterintuitive, because the aim of BPS was always to ensure that looking for a job and finding a job would be part of a longer term trajectory. What's become quite clear is that for several young people walking through the door, finding a job and an income is the most urgent thing for them to resolve in their lives. And so this is why we can see quite a bit of referrals to job seeking and quite a bit of support going into connecting young people to job opportunities. As Lauren said earlier, we do remain in touch with those young people. The coaches are quite careful in trying to understand how often they should check in with a young person who's found a job and what kind of additional support to keep providing. Next slide, please. So 159 young people in Atlantis expressed an interest. 131 of those were eligible, and about 52, I think was the number I said, then actively went on to take part in the sessions. What we can see is that the majority of those young people are female, and most of them are living either in a freestanding house or in a room in a house, which we assume is their room within their family house. But for some, this will be slightly different, and this is something we'll be tapping into in a bit more detail later on. Next slide, please. When we look at the overall composition of the cohort of young people who are not in education, employment, or training in the country, we see that the majority of those are neat while not having completed their matric. And so our perhaps naive assumption was that we would be attracting quite a large number of young people who would not have completed their matric into the basic package of support program. What we're finding, though, is that the majority of young people coming through the door are those who have at least completed a grade 12, and some have some form of post-school education and training. We also notice that of young people coming through the door, the majority do not have anyone who is financially dependent on them, and then there is a smaller fraction that has one person financially dependent on them. What this seems to indicate is that in Atlantis, we are currently not necessarily attracting the most vulnerable young people who are not in education, employment, or training. And this is something we're tapping into in conversations with the coaches and the mobilizers at the moment to try and understand why we are getting a particular profile of young people through the door. We assume, but we don't know right now, that this might have to do with the fact that BPS invites young people to conduct quite a bit of work to put them on a longer term trajectory, but doesn't automatically connect them back or immediately connect them back to the schooling system or an employment opportunity, and that perhaps the young people who have at least a matric and some form of post-school education or training are ready, willing, and able to start those trajectories, whereas perhaps some of the more vulnerable young people are not and need additional outreach or support. Next slide, please. When young people express an interest and come through the door for an information session or a first session, we ask them to complete a number of questions that capture their socioeconomic backgrounds and how they are doing at that particular moment in time. And I'm going to go through this very quickly. These data, again, here indicate that the majority of young people coming through the door for that first session are not necessarily the ones who are struggling the most. You can see there they're scoring moderate to the majority are scoring moderately to thriving on a well-being scale, and also the majority of them indicate not necessarily facing high levels of stress or anxiety. We'll come back to this just now in a later slide. Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you so much. So, as Lauren indicated, the coaches work with young people to try and understand what their particular situation is at that point in time, and work with young people to understand what services they would need to take up at that point in time. And so at that point, referrals are made by the coaches to existing service providers in the community or beyond. The majority of the referrals, and we call all of them referrals at the moment, but it really means providing support to access one or other service or opportunity. BPS stands for Basic Package of Support for Young People who are not in education, employment, or training. I just saw a question in the chat there. The majority of the referrals or support efforts have been, in fact, for young people to look at employment opportunities or education opportunities. And you can see the breakdown there. There are additional services such as health, living circumstances, or financial support that have been made as referrals as well. The graph on the right-hand side there shows you exactly what I was talking about earlier, that young people move through this coaching journey, not necessarily all moving from session 1 to session 2. So the drop down there from session 1 to session 2 is both related to a timeline. So some of these young people are scheduled for session 2 and still need to take that up. Others have been much more difficult to get back through the door for session 2. Next slide, please. We've spent some time with the youth mobilizers and the coaches unpacking again some of the support that they see young people asking for when coming through the door. So we asked the mobilizers to indicate again that the majority of young people that asked for their particular support really do so asking support with regards to job seeking. So it's creating or writing cover letters, updating CVs, applying for jobs and educational opportunities. We enroll all young people who come through the door of the basic package of support onto sayouth.mobi so that they would simultaneously have visibility of what kind of education and training opportunities there are for them. They can also then collaboratively work with the mobilizers and the coaches to understand whether a job opportunity would or would not be suitable for them. They also register onto the Atlantis Special Economic Zone database and the Department of Employment and Labor's ESSA system. We also have collaborated with the Department of Higher Education and Training to provide training to our site team in the use of the NCAP portal, which provides additional information and insight on educational opportunities and trajectories. Young people are finding that NCAP portal very useful, but do ask the mobilizers for some additional support. Next slide, please. As I said earlier, of those young people who express an interest, not all of them come through the door for the first session or remain in the coaching sessions. And of some of those who do find a job through support of the basic package of support quite early on in their trajectory. And so we do lose some of these young people in our active cohort because they then indicate to the coaches that they are actually too busy to continue with the coaches. And the coaches find a way to remain in touch with them. We have a number of young people who have made it through all 4 coaching sessions, and we then repeat some of these batteries of questions that ask them how they are doing emotionally. And when we first saw this slide, Lauren and I had a little heart attack, and I think some of our implementing partners as well, because it looks at first sight as if young people are actually doing worse after the coaching sessions than they did in the beginning. We've interrogated this quite carefully with the coaches and with some of our colleagues at the Department of Psychology, and what is possible is that, or what seems to be the feedback from the coaches and the mobilizers, is that when young people first come through the door, they are very reserved and not necessarily willing or able to express how they are really doing. It's also possible, as our colleagues in the psychology department pointed out, that young people come through the door expecting a job opportunity and therefore aren't necessarily going to really disclose how they are feeling and what their emotional well-being really is. And what we notice is that after the coaching session, after a number of coaching sessions, the coaches are able to pick up on quite some emotional distress among young people, which wasn't necessarily conveyed to them in the first session at all. So we are looking currently at developing an short battery of questions that can be resent to young people on a regular basis to track their emotional well-being more regularly and over an extended period of time, so we get a real sense of how they are actually doing at different intervals. Next slide, please. We see the same trend when looking at the stress and anxiety indicators. They seem to shift into a reflection of higher levels of stress and anxiety than they did pre-session 1. And again, this is entirely in line with what the coaches tell us and told us before we even started to look at the numbers, that levels of insecurity and stress become visible to them in their engagement with young people in some of the sessions after the introductory session. Next slide, please. When we ask young people for feedback on their coaching, so this is the qualitative data alongside of the quantitative, we realize that they do really appreciate the coaching sessions and the personal support that they receive from their coaches. Next slide, please. Okay, so as I said, the basic package of support has several building blocks. One is the coaching and the support, which is a real core building block. The other one is the building of a community of practice in the immediate environment of young people that invites service providers in the community to come together and collaboratively problem solve around some of these issues that young people face. And those are issues that are coming out of the conversations with young people. The site manager is responsible for inviting and hosting these community of practice meetings and for problem solving with the other service providers around the challenges young people face. Several of these engagements have already in Atlantis led to additional support being provided for young people. The Department of Employment and Labour, which very kindly hosts the first basic package of support pilot site in Atlantis, has agreed to provide additional career counseling to young people who would be interested. So this is an additional service that is offered at the site by the career counsellors of the Department of Employment and Labour. As I said earlier, the Department of Higher Education and Training provided training on the use of the NCAP portal to the site teams so they can provide that support to young people. The South African Depression and Anxiety Group has set up a special WhatsApp support group and is training and this is virtual training, the site team members who are interested and eligible to become support group facilitators. This is an offer we have quite gratefully taken up because of the realization that there are such high levels of mental ill health among young people and not sufficient in-person service provision available within the community. A direct result of the community of practice meetings has been the local clinic setting up a youth power hour every week, which is specifically allocated to young people in a specific space allocated for them, with the aim to provide a safe space for young people to walk in and share their healthcare needs. Thank you. We've also had a couple of young people. One of the core principles of the basic package of support is that a basic package of support site cannot be a closed door to young people. So even when a young person walks through the door and does not necessarily fit the criteria, so it might be too old, might not be from the area, these young people are invited to register on sayouth.mobi, are referred to the Department of Employment and Labour services on the other side of the building, where they can access some services. We've had a number of instances where the team has had to think quite hard what it means not to become a closed door. Some young people have walked through the door who openly spoke about being active gang members, which was quite a tricky situation for the site team to navigate, because the concern then is around the safety of the site team, of these young people themselves, and of other young people accessing the site. And so there's had to be a real collaborative problem solving within the community of practice on how best then to support these young people. It's an ongoing process and ongoing learning. And we've got our partners of Harambee who are on the call at the moment as well, who have provided training, and I think they will speak about that in more detail later on, training to the site team on their Hustler program towards young people, so that when the coaches realize that there are young people who might be interested in this, it can be offered to them. Next slide, please. Okay, questions. Let me pause for a moment. I see there's lots going on in the chat, but I haven't been able to look at those questions in detail. Any questions for me right now?
So perhaps, Ariane, a lot of the questions Lauren has been answering, but Fiona has asked the question, and she said she wanted to know whether the coaches are professional psychologists that are supporting the young people at the pilot sites.
Thank you so much. So we will come back to that in some more detail. These are, as Lauren says, qualified child and youth care trainers. They've been trained by the NACCW to be child and youth care workers, and they then receive additional onboarding and training in the coaching approach that has been developed by our partners at the DG Murray Trust. It's quite an intensive process of onboarding and training the child and youth care workers in that additional coaching approach. That training that is, and I think Simone, who is on the call, may speak about this a little bit more later on as well. The training that is provided is also very hands-on and longer term. So it isn't a once-off training and then the coaches are on their own. Simone remains there with others on the team to provide additional feedback to the coaches as they go through the process with young people.
Can I just encourage Yassine from Northlink College to post his question in the chat, please, and then we can respond. Yassine? And then Ariane, there was quite a few questions, but as I said, Lauren had answered most of them. People had asked about the provinces that the pilot sites are rolling out in, Western Cape, Gauteng, KZN, and possibly Eastern Cape. Yassine had commented that, TVET colleges are ideal partners. And then, there were questions about whether the BPS limits the interaction to 4 sessions. And of course, it's not limited to 4 sessions, but, help is provided as required. Many of our participants are sharing the contact details. Mpumelelo at Backlog Busters also wanting to participate. And then, of course, Donald touched on a very important part of this, and that was about the importance of a trusting relationship being built between the youth care workers and the young person that walks in and seeks assistance. And perhaps you want to talk a little bit about the sensitivity around those issues, Lauren. Thank you.
Lauren, do you want me to continue or do you want to jump in here?
I think just one of the things about the trusting relationship before I hand back to you, and I have been responding in the chat as well, is firstly just to affirm what Donald is saying, is that having somebody to talk to, we can see how in the qualitative data, how that shifts how young people are just their demeanor, and how important that relationship is. One of the other points has been around coaches and mental health support, particularly given some of the very difficult circumstances that young people face. And I think this is something that we pick up on in one of the later slides, but the youth coaches are trained child and youth care workers, and they do have some capacity to counsel, but there is a need for more intensive counseling support often, which should be delivered by either a psychologist or a social worker, and this is something we're looking at also in relation to supporting the youth coaches themselves. And I know that we do touch on that in a later slide. And just to acknowledge the partnership with NACCW in training those child and youth care workers who we then train to become the coaches.
Thanks, Lauren. I also see a couple of additional questions on accessing the training. So I think what is important is that the stage the basic package of support program is in at the moment is very much one of implementing and learning, and where necessary, adapting and iterating. The development of the coaching approach and tools is based on quite an intensive process, and again, Simone can speak about that later, of testing those coaching tools and approaches with civil society partners. But this is the first stage in which that coaching approach and practice is implemented across several sites in several communities with different profiles of young people. And so I think we need to ask the community to give us a little bit more time to make sure that the approach and the tools are as robust as we can get them. This is part of the learning trajectory that we're on for the next 12 months. And then at some point, it is definitely the intention to ensure that the approach can be scaled up to many more young people across the country. But right now, we are very much working on the approach and the implementation to make it as strong and as powerful as we can get it. On the point of trust between coaches and young people, there is in fact a slide that speaks to that at some point. One of the messages, when we were looking at the numbers and asking the site team to reflect on some of what we were seeing with us, for instance, on the referrals, the site manager and the coaches told us, you know, for very many young people, this is the first, they expressed that this is the first time someone is actually sitting down and listening with them, trying to understand where they're coming from and trying to figure out a pathway forward. And young people are not necessarily willing to be referred to another service and would rather go through some additional steps with their coaches before being referred to an outside service. One of the points that will be discussed with this month's Community of Practice meeting is whether then it would be a good idea to invite some of the service providers to come to the basic package of support site and provide some of the services there, because it seems like that space surrounded with the site team has become a safe space for many of these young people. But again, this is work in progress, and so we learn as we go. Next slide, please.
Ariane, I wonder if you could just answer Yassine's question, and just to remind you, you've got 5 minutes to wrap up this segment. And Yassine just wanted to know which colleges are currently part of the program and what is the nature of their support.
So in Atlantis, we work with the local TVET college as a member of the Community of Practice. The college has been very supportive in that they have worked just recently with the site team to host I can't remember what name the team used, but it was kind of an expose of services available to young people within the community. So this was hosted by the local TVET college, the Department of Employment and Labour local site team, and the Cape Town team, and the basic package of support team, because again, this was a finding coming out of the engagements with young people, this lack of distrust, this lack of trust in services, and the not knowing what services are available. So in Atlantis, the TVET college has played quite an active role so far. Each of the colleges, in each of the areas, the different colleges will be approached to become part of the Community of Practice, if that helps.
Thank you, Ariane.
Pleasure. Next slide, please. I think perhaps, I will need to move through this very quickly. So as I said earlier, it's clear that we don't necessarily get all young people back through the door between expression of interest, first session and following sessions. When our coaches and mobilizers try to follow up with young people who originally expressed an interest and even came for a session or scheduled a session and then didn't show up. The key challenges that very clearly stand out is the cost of transport for young people to even come to the site and take up the coaching practice. The fact that some of the young women who join the program have care responsibilities and no one to take over those responsibilities in the time that they would be there for coaching. Some of them have begun bringing their child to the site so that they can join the coaching. And for others, there definitely seems to be an issue of or a challenge of understanding what the program offers and expectations on how fast they would be able to move forward. But again, that's part of the exploration we're in right now. Next slide, please. I think I'm handing over to Lauren here. Am I?
I can jump in here, Ariane, if you don't mind taking over answering the many questions that are coming in the chat. So one of the issues that has come up in the chat is this need for additional support. So when we started the process of planning this, our initial design for the basic package of support was to have one key community BPS hub that had coaches, a coordinator, and either a social worker or psychologist, because we expected that mental health services would be quite constrained in most communities, and that this overarching hub would then support several site teams in a wider community. If we go to the next slide, please. What we've actually had capacity and funding to pilot is just the site team, where we have the coaches, the mobilizers, and the site manager. And what we've learned is that the site manager needs a lot of support to build management and leadership capabilities, and that there's a great deal of need for psychosocial support, both to the young people, but also to the site staff, especially the coaches who are interacting with the young people who face these multiple challenges, but also hold really good, high levels of responsibility towards those young people. And so what we're learning very early on is that that original approach of having a social worker or psychologist supporting the site teams, both the teams themselves and the young people that are accessing the services, is absolutely crucial. Next slide, please. I'll skip over this example for the sake of time. If we can go to, and we'll skip over the monitoring and evaluation reflections. There's lots of lessons there. I wanted to jump into community engagement. One of the things that we've learned is that although we have excellent partners in the local communities, there are, of course, key gaps in service provisions, and especially mental health. And so there's a real need for us to nest this local level community of practice into a wider provincial set of partners so that we're able to access services at the provincial level to problem solve. And we've had some key examples where we've had to reach out to partners outside of Atlantis to provide services in Atlantis. And then the possible need to insource some of that support. So for instance, the social worker or community psychologist that I mentioned earlier, who are able to help the team contain very difficult situations and provide more intensive counselling where it's required. The skill of the site manager with regard to community engagement is absolutely crucial, and we've been so lucky to find really good site managers with community engagement skills, but they still require a lot of training and mentorship to keep that community of practice going. And it's important that in having this community of practice that we keep the energy levels up. We don't want this to turn into yet another community forum. There's many of those. So how do we keep partners interested and realizing that there's something in it for them, and that constant learning that the community of practice partners are engaging in between one another and learning from what's happening in the basic package of support is crucial. It's a very time-consuming piece of the work, and it often goes unaccounted for, and we're learning that we really need to be costing in the level of support that the community engagement element of the work takes. Next slide, please. And we'll go over again, another slide. Just some very quick policy lessons to end off with. That collaboration is crucial and complex. So I think hopefully what you've picked up over the last couple of slides is how crucial this collaboration is. The basic package of support is not something that can operate on its own. It absolutely rests on collaboration at various different levels, but this takes time and skills and often goes unrecognized and unaccounted for. And there's pressure to be seen to be meeting performance targets, which often undermines collaborative problem solving. Working systemically is the only way. So the youth-facing intervention component of the program might make young people feel hopeful, but it's not going to change much on its own. We have to be shifting those systems at the local level to ensure that those young people are not falling through the cracks and that we have sustainable change in local communities. The importance of research and implementation. We've been very focused on ensuring that this is an evidence-based program that has been developed. But Ariane and I will both tell you when we hit implementation phase, there was a huge amount of learning, and we're incredibly grateful to our implementation partners who've been along for this ride with us, particularly DGMT, but a number of other partners who've really brought their implementation experience to the table. And so it's a process of iterative learning and adjusting and being open to taking risks and making mistakes and being okay with those mistakes as long as we're learning from them. The COP members at the local level have really valued the research and data that we've been able to provide that can inform their own practice. That's both quantitative data, mapped data, and qualitative data, and sharing that data in an open way, just as we have today, even when we're questioning the data ourselves, is crucial, I think, to ensuring that we're learning collaboratively. And then I think that's the last slide, if we click over, is that this developing a culture of collaboration is something that I think we need to be doing more widely. When we talk about wicked problems or sticky problems that are really difficult to deal with, the multi-stakeholder investments are crucial, and a siloed approach to problem solving rarely works. And I know that the policy landscape is very much shifting towards this approach, as is evidenced with the National Pathway Management Network and SAYouth.mobi, YD Collab and other initiatives. But this often goes against the norm, and there's a great deal of work that needs to go into inculcating a culture of collaborative problem solving and a culture of risk and learning, that we have to trust in the process of learning and trying new things. And then I just think we need to recognize passion and capacity. In Atlantis, the site team itself and the COP members have been really passionate about making a difference and are working in their respective domains to do so. And it's really important that we celebrate and recognize these efforts in spaces where we're often very critical. And I think that's us.
Thank you, Ariane, and thank you, Lauren, and thank you to all the participants for the very, very interesting questions that have been posted. I think that some of the observations is about, the time it takes to build a community of practice, and Delia had posted about, being sensitive to the different community dynamics and navigating that space and encouraging people, despite their differences, to be a part of the community of practice. There was a question about whether we have experienced that there are youth with disabilities who have been able to access these services that have been provided. And of course, what also stands out, and perhaps Ariane and Lauren, you can answer that question in the chat about access for people for young people with disabilities. And of course, I think what really stands out for me in this segment is the importance of being able to reach out, the importance of localization, the importance of making contact, the importance of the youth mobilizers. In this day and age where, we try to be really speedy about things, and we automate. Human touch is still such an important aspect of this work. And so that is what really stands out for me. We are running almost 10 minutes behind schedule, but I think before I give some of our partners an opportunity to reflect on their observations around these interventions. Let me just go back to our participants and give them a chance to react. So there's a live poll. There's a few questions. Please answer those questions so that your voice can also be heard in this space. And then after that, we will ask some of our partners to reflect on their experiences. Thank you. Thank you for posting it, Lerato. So the forms are there. Go onto the link, complete it, please, because we'd like to have your voice in the room right now. Yeah. And then also to note, Lerato said that she will send you, all of you, the presentation this afternoon. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Eldridge, and others who are reaching out and indicating that they would like to be a part of the program. That's really great. You can, I see that you have your details here. Lauren has also posted her details. And so if there's a pilot that is in the making close to you, the team will most certainly be reaching out. Okay, we've had 31 responses so far. Perhaps we'll pause there, Lerato, and you can sum it for me, and I can just then comment on what our participants are saying in respect of which of the BPS recommendations are the most important for achieving effective youth support. Yeah, so this thing is going so fast. Okay. Oh, Lerato, can we pause it now? Okay, so in respect of the first question, making psychosocial support available is one of the key things that people have identified as being a priority. Can you move to the next one, Lerato? Then we asked about what is the most important ingredient in getting organizations to work collaboratively, and overwhelmingly, the answer was around creating opportunities for knowledge sharing. Thank you, Lerato. Are those are the two questions? Okay, right. Thank you. Thank you very much to all the participants for bringing your voice into the room. Next, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Penny. Penny is the Chief Community Partnerships Officer at Harambee Youth Employment Accelerator, a long-time partner of the Jobs Fund. She brings 3 decades of experience in youth development, employment creation, human rights, and working with civil society organizations to increase their impact. After ensuring that the National Youth Service Policy was translated into programs for youth at Umsubomvu Youth Fund, Penny then spent 7 years as Director of Shisaka Development Management, working on projects within the public sector with a primary focus on community works programs. Penny holds a master's degree in international development studies from Deakin University, as well as a Diploma of Education and Bachelor of Arts from Monash University. I also want to welcome Adela. Adela is the lead coalition building at Harambee Youth Employment Accelerator and sits as a steering committee member of Youth Development Collaboration Lab. She's passionate about community development and advocates for a collaborative environment where stakeholders cooperate, inclusive and innovative solutions that centralize and serve young and marginalized people at scale. Adela holds a Bachelor of Arts with honors in development studies from the University of South Africa, a BTech and diploma in international communications from Tshwane University of Technology, and she has over 6 years experience working in youth development. And then I'd also like to welcome Simone, and Simone works for the DG Murray Trust. She's the project lead for the BPS at the Trust. She leads the development of the BPS coaching practice and quality assurance processes. She has a keen interest in using collaborative design approaches to craft innovative, high-impact programs that place young people at the center. She's completing her master's in inclusive innovation at UCT's Graduate School of Business and is a Bertha Scholar recipient. Her master's dissertation examines how technological interventions focus on providing skills matching and training opportunities to young unemployed South Africans' impact on young people's sense of well-being and agency. So participants, you are in good company. All of these super women with their superpowers firmly believes that putting young people at the center of all interventions. So over to you, Penny. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nadja, and it's great to be with you today. And I know we don't have much time, so I'm Penny from the Harambee Youth Employment Accelerator. We're a social enterprise that is really trying to increase youth economic inclusion and doing that by growing the opportunities available for young people by supporting new opportunity creation, encouraging more employers to hire entry-level work seekers, exploring a whole range of other income-generating opportunities outside of employment, because we know that's desperately needed, and providing a platform called SA Youth, which supports the National Pathway Management Network and is designed to make sure that all young people can see all the opportunities that are available to them and are encouraged to, these are the opportunities where they're most likely to succeed. And then also that platform helps any employer or opportunity holder find the young people who are most likely to succeed. Now, we've been had an important investment, as many of the people on this call have, in supporting the Presidential Youth Employment Intervention. And as has been discussed over and over again today, there are so many stakeholders across government, private sector, civil society, education, the funding landscape, who are invested in solving youth unemployment. Unfortunately, we often tend to work in isolation, often even in competition, as has also been mentioned. And so the National Pathway Management Network is an imagining of how do we collaborate and how do we make sure that young people don't bear the cost of having to move between all our services, but we're able to put the combined value of our services in front of a young person so they can easily access it. I think an important word that's been used many times is pathways. And what is a pathway and what is it we talk about? And it's those hops, skips and jumps that any young person takes to move from not being in employment, education and training into sustained income. And what we're learning a huge amount about is it's volunteering, it's learning, it's access to online learning, it's coaching, it's psychological support. And I think thank you to Lauren and Ariane, because BPS has been a critical stakeholder in the imagining of this National Pathway Management Network, and the research supported by the Jobs Fund and others really made explicit in 2019, it can't just be learning and earning if we're trying to solve youth unemployment. And I think that this power of a community of practice and how we are able to come together in a very local context to make the combined services that do exist accessible to young people and track collectively what the impact of those services are is incredibly important. And on that note, I'm just going to hand over to my colleague Adela to share a little bit about how Harambee's been collaborating with BPS in Atlantis and Orange Farm.
Thank you, Penny.
Thank you so much, Penny. Good morning, colleagues. Good afternoon. Is it morning? Yes, it's still morning. Good morning, colleagues. My name is Adela Ndovu from Harambee as well. And I'm really quite interested in that crucial aspect of building a community of practice, which everybody has been referring to. But before I go there, I may just interest you in just talking a little bit about what Harambee and BPS have been doing in Atlantis, as well as in Orange Farm, in terms of just supporting the youth there through SA Youth as a platform and a tool that they can use for looking for employment and learning opportunities. So in the past 2 weeks, the Cape Town team in particular has been training BPS mobilizers to facilitate the hustle content. The hustle content is essentially how young people can be are supported to drive hustling, to engage in hustling activities, which are pretty much income generating. And so over the past 2 weeks, we have seen young hustlers, not actually over the past 2 weeks, but in other programs, we have seen hustlers transition into being self-employed. And so we're hoping that even at the Atlantis and other sites that are still to come, we will see this kind of support happening, and we continue to train young people and the mobilizers there to facilitate hustling content. And going back to the community of practice, I just wanted to also mention that the BPS team in Harambee continue working together to understand exactly how the different services that are available in a community that's participating in BPS program can be made available and visible on SA Youth or even the Youth Explorer, because I think it is quite important that all available youth support services are made visible and accessible to the growing network of opportunity seekers. With that said, ensuring that we have an inclusive community of practice on the ground is as imperative. I think that question about how do we track accessibility of the content or BPS activities to young persons with disabilities was very crucial for me. So the answer there, I would say that BPS team, the Harambee team, as well as the network of partners that we have, are ensuring that an inclusive community of practice with all on the ground partners are brought forward and actually establish, a support system per site. So the community of practice, much like the youth supported, must really be as inclusive as possible so that youth, or rather work seekers with disabilities in each area can be supported, prioritized, and we would also like to see them transition into income generating opportunities. I think I'll stop there. And then Penny, can I just invite you to tell us a little bit about the Global Opportunity
Youth Network? I think we're out of time, but we'll be happy to share with anyone who's interested. Thanks, Nadra.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Penny. Thank you, Adela. Perhaps, Penny, you can post something about that in the chat. Yeah? Right then. Can we move to the next slide, please? Right. Simone, would you like to share with us?
Great. Thank you so much, Nadja. Thank you, everyone. It's great to be here. So the DG Murray Trust has been involved with the BPS project, as has been said from the beginning. We have primarily been responsible for developing the basic package of support coaching practice, which refers to all of the tools and processes that the youth coaches use to engage with and support young neets who come onto the project. And as Ariane mentioned, we've also been involved in designing what that role, the role of youth coach, needs to look like, how we can support, train, and provide ongoing support to those coaches. We've also been responsible for designing quality assurance processes for various practices at BPS sites. So looking, across site managers and mobilizers. And we've also been involved with ongoing strategic implementation support during this very exciting pilot phase that we are currently in. Just to briefly touch on DGMT's motivation for being involved with the basic package of support. So the motivation for partnering has been primarily because of this very strong strategic alignment between what the BPS is trying to achieve and DGMT's some of DGMT's 10 strategic focus areas. So the BPS aligns very strongly with two of our strategic focus areas specifically. They are shown here, number 9 and 10. Number 9 being to create new connections to opportunity for young people, and 10 being to support young people to keep their grip on opportunity. So really thinking beyond just placements for young people, but what kind of ongoing support is required to ensure that they can sustain whatever opportunity that they access. In addition to this very strong strategic alignment between what DGMT and BPS is trying to achieve, as a public innovator, we've been strong champions of the BPS because it addresses such a critical need, which is those young NEETs who are furthest away from opportunity. So the program really strives to try and figure out ways to engage those youth who face multiple barriers and who perhaps require more intensive support to bring them closer to opportunities in the labour market. Similarly, the BPS is really unique in how it's placed young people at the centre of this ecosystem of services. And so as a site-based intervention, there are really exciting opportunities about how we could pool in multiple services at a site that can meet some of the more holistic needs that young people need serviced as they try and access opportunities. Next slide, please. So in terms of lessons on collaboration, there's been many. The first one is that there are many different forms of collaboration, and it's helpful to think about it in terms of a spectrum. Where on the one end of the spectrum, you have very deep engagement, ongoing interaction with different partners. And then on the other end, you have lighter touch interaction, where the collaboration is almost more just coordinating the services that different partners bring. So for the BPS, coordination has been where partners come with their existing solutions to a particular problem, and we really just coordinate each other's services to ensure that we're able to reach an overarching objective. Consultation, if we move a bit further down the spectrum, has occurred where a partner has a solution to a particular problem, and they come to the partnership for input on that solution or for sign-off so that they can carry it forward. And then we have this very deep and intensive form of collaboration where partners come together to better understand a problem and together work to develop a solution to that problem. So this type of collaboration is obviously, it's more time intensive, it requires more resources, but it yields much greater rewards because you're drawing from multiple perspectives and skills and experiences for much greater results. Of course, because of the additional resources and time that this kind of collaboration requires, there's always a trade-off between efficiency and that type of collaboration. It's just simply not feasible to have every brain on every problem that emerges. And so what has worked well in the BPS partnership is that where we have had to make that trade-off, where one partner has had to take a particular piece of work, there's been very high levels of trust, which I think has made the partnership work so successfully. It's been incredibly important to trust that each partner, whatever problem that they are addressing independently, they're doing so in a way that aligns with the BPS values, and that will enable us to achieve the BPS vision. The third lesson has been that there are different, we've kind of moved along the spectrum of collaboration to accommodate the different project phases. So, for example, in the design phase of the project, it's really valuable to have very deep collaboration because you're wanting to get as many perspectives and skill sets as possible to work towards building a potential solution. So, for example, when DGMT designed the tools and the processes for the coaching practice, we engaged very extensively with a number of our civil society partners who work with young NEET. And so that was a very collaborative process over a number of months. We then again collaborated with other organizations to test and get feedback on some of those aspects of the design. And through that collaboration, we came up with kind of 3 guiding principles upon which all of the tools and processes for the BPS have been based. And just to mention here, those are to build agency in young NEETs, to build confidence, and to build trust. And so it was, just a testament to the power of collaboration. Through those collaborative workshops, we really came up with the kind of core principles that have informed all other design work. Then as we moved to the build phase, where the design had been completed and we were now having to build it out, we moved more to a coordination or consultation type of collaboration, where we could have discrete work streams working on different aspects of the design. And then, as has been mentioned, during the pilot phase, all those lines became blurred again. There's, as I'm sure many on the call can attest to, in implementation, work streams have merged, and it's been very useful to work in a highly collaborative way, where we're problem solving for issues as they arise across different work streams. And then once we have piloted the design, once we have systems and processes that are appropriate for scale, we can then again move to a kind of a type of collaboration that's more about coordination and consultation. Again, as different partners can take on discrete pieces of work and execute on those fairly independently. During the pilot phase, which is the very energizing and busy phase that we are currently in, what has made this phase work well so far is having partners who are very comfortable with ambiguity. So being comfortable that we don't have the answers right now, but that we're figuring it out. And I think that is so crucial when piloting, because what you don't want to do is presuppose a solution because of the pressure to be able to say that but then have a solution that potentially doesn't really address the problem because you haven't actually tested it comprehensively enough. Similarly, it's helpful to work with partners who have agility, who can quite nimbly adjust their approaches and ways of working, and can think quite innovatively on how to deal with some of the unanticipated challenges that come up when piloting. For this reason, it's been really helpful to have a very small implementation team during this pilot phase. So a team of people who have ears close to the ground, who are able to work across multiple work streams, and so that we can learn and iterate as quickly as possible, so that we're able to get the greatest possible benefit out of this pilot phase. So we really do want to rigorously test and iterate as much as possible, so that we have a project down the line that we know is robust and ready for scale. And then our final lesson on collaboration with the BPS is, with the goal of ensuring that no young South African is left behind, coordination is absolutely necessary to ensure that we can coordinate between different services, to make sure that young people have access to the multiple services that they need, that will enable them to access opportunities. But because of the complexity and the multiplicity of the deprivations that young people in South Africa face, collaborative problem solving is essential. And that is where I leave you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Simone. Thank you. I'm sure our audience understands that there is so much, there's such a richness of information here. So I'm really, really happy that people have been sharing their contact details. We'll try and, collate all the contact details here and share that with your permission, of course, with other participants. I see the cheers. This has just been a whirlwind tour, and it's like really touching on the iceberg, the tip of the iceberg of such a deep and entrenched problem in South Africa. So to all my presenters, I am so blessed this morning. I have this like team of super women with superpowers who are absolutely passionate about the work that they do in this space. And then to top that off, I have participants. There's about 120 participants, and when I look at the questions and the willingness to collaborate, I can only be thankful that we've had this session. When I started out, I said that learning and sharing what we learn is a very important tenet of the work of the Jobs Fund, and so I'm so grateful that the Jobs Fund and my team have been able to put this together. I'm grateful to the presenters. I'm grateful to the team. I'm grateful to all the participants in the way in which you have participated. We've said before, the presentation will be sent to you. In terms of furthering our learning, it will be really appreciated if all of you would complete the evaluation. We do want to do better into the future, and so tell us how you've experienced today's session so that we can make sure that we do better. Key themes from today's session, there's been a lot of talk about collaboration. There's the BPS team, there's SA Youth Mobi, there's the various partnerships that are happening around different things. There's the Presidential Youth Employment Intervention. And I hope that through sharing what the BPS team has been doing, that you can see that we are very serious about breaking down the silos. You can see the importance of the work that the team has been doing, the lead times that is required in building those communities of practice at the local level, the importance of localization. You can see that there's no shortcuts here, that if we are going to be serious about putting our youth at the center of our interventions, then we have to cooperate, we have to collaborate, we have to find ways to proactively do that. The importance of the work around connecting with young people in ways that matter is so important. The need is deep within our communities. We are going to be piloting at 4 sites. And then, of course, we have to look at into the future, how do we embed this into the work of South Africa, and how do we make this a reality in every community? It has not been lost on us, the importance of this work, to be able to extend that into various sectors, mining communities, and into rural areas. So with that, please complete the evaluation form. Thank you so much to all of you for participating. The Jobs Fund, my team and I are very thankful that we have been able to be a part of the BPS. We've been able to be a part of the design work for the Presidential Youth Employment Interventions, that we have been able to contribute to this movement of breaking down silos and encouraging participation. So let us all commit here this morning, people. Let us commit to leaving no South African youth behind. Thank you so much. I wish all of you a blessed day further and a gentle day further. Take care, everybody.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Najwa.
Thank you. This is our happy project, indeed.
It really is.
It is. When bureaucracy gets you down, I go visit one of the pilot sites, or I go visit one of my projects. My happy space, for sure.
I really hope that our Atlantis team is still on this call and heard you say that. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Keep up the good work, Shanray.